charge of really deconstructing the administrative state, which we're seeing.
This is the deep state. This is far the administrative state.
Yeah, and it's not just happening in like 1.5 times speed. It's happening in like 3 times speed, and it's glorious to see, especially from the White House lawn. But to that point, a few days before President Trump was sworn in, Norm Eisen, the whole sort of lawfare brigade, they put out the 3rd edition of what's called the Democracy Playbook, which comes from the Brookings Institution. And if you sort of go back to the core thesis of this show, I think really it emanated from Darren Beattie. Congratulations to Darren.
Undersecretary Darren Beattie.
Yes, sorry. It's the first time. That was sort of the theory of the case, that all of the tactics that they had used for color revolutions abroad, they were sort of turning the guns inward circular and now using it to bring about this idea that we have, quote, democratic backsliding, and therefore we need to get rid of President Trump because he's an autocrat, right? So they put out this new edition, this 3rd edition, and proving our point, it is now entirely focused on how to push back against President Trump and domestic political forces. But I want to get even more granular here, because if you look at the verticals through which they have tried to push back against President Trump, and we were remarking on this yesterday, it's Jamie Raskin groveling on the steps of USAID, right? They don't have any levers of power.
Sad.
Yeah, it's lame. It's pathetic. But here's the thing. Democracy Forward, which was sort of the apparatus, the compendium of all of these resistance groups, 120 plus organizations, the one outfit that they set up prior to President Trump being sworn in was something called Civil Service Strong. And it was the idea that they were going to provide legal aid and resources to whistleblowers, sort of, I think, a shadow impeachment, right? They can't impeach President Trump right now, but they're laying the groundwork, or they're trying to sort of do it indirectly.
They want to build the case and have the resistance off that.
And USAID was the linchpin on all of that. Why do I say that?
Wow.
Because it's mentioned dozens of times in the Democracy Playbook, so much so that I want to read you a quote from it, talking about how USAID is essentially the linchpin in funding what they say civil society, the media, which is the only way they can push back. An important component of deterrence by denial is a robust and empowered independent media able to investigate, watchdog, and hold violators to account. Therefore, part of the deterrence strategy should include increased governmental resources and an expansion of programs and agencies to support a sustained and top-level commitment to support free media. This should include supporting independent investigative consortiums such as the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, which has been funded in part by the U.S. Agency for International Development, the State Department, and private foundations. And to that point, the co-author of this report, well, he also happens to be was formerly the co-chair of the Political, Economic, Trade, and Development Working Groups for the EU, Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, Armenia, Poland, and Romania. So you see how this all runs together. And most importantly, Steve, what they talk about in terms of political opposition groups, which is their second priority, and all of this, the first one being securing elections. I think we know that's a little bit of projection. They talk about wanting to foster alliances internationally, from form networks between other opposition groups, electoral activists, civil society groups, and where appropriate, international organizations and actors. So what did we say when we sat here on election night? They will outsource their opposition internationally because they have no foothold here, and we have gutted their censorship industrial complex. And the fact that we are now removing these people forcibly from these buildings where that was how they were going to have their resistance, by leaking and being whistleblowers, we have deprived them of that ability, and that is why they're melting down.
Go back to this, very important, what Elon's team is doing, cutting off the emails, cutting out the access. Go back to physically making sure the buildings are hermetically sealed. Because these guys have been working from home, but they want access to all that. To cut them off gives them their power to leak and to get to the Washington Post.
You can't whistleblow if you don't have the whistle, right? And to that point, you're already seeing every night on MSNBC, you have another so-called whistleblower, a former, now fired government employee, whether it was the inspector generals, whether it was the FBI people, the DOJ people, all going on there. Now, make no mistake, those people wanted to make their MSNBC primetime debut, but they wanted to be doing it where the Chiron would still they'd still have that title, and they'd be actively leaking against President Trump. But they now no longer have that ability. And like I said, I think this Democracy Playbook, right, the idea of Norm Eisen in concert with Mark Zaid, who was the lawyer for the first impeachment inquiry, it's all the same people who want to be impeaching President Trump right now, but they can't because they don't have the power, and now they're being stripped of any ability to sort of carry out what I guess they accuse us of having a shadow government, a shadow impeachment. And in reality, that's what they've been trying to do.
Unbelievable. Marjorie Taylor Greene has just put forward, she's going to come forward with legislation to take it down. this whole roll-up under Rubio, right now, from the White House perspective, they're shutting this thing down, right? They're going to zero this out to never let this happen again, correct?
They're subsuming it, as they should, and I